This episode is brought to you by Buffalo Trace Distillery. Powerful yet smooth. Contained but never tame. Proudly going their own way, but never going alone. This is the spirit inside Buffalo Trace Bourbon. Made at Buffalo Trace Distillery, the world's most award-winning distillery. Buffalo Trace is always perfectly untamed. Distilled, aged, and bottled by Buffalo Trace Distillery, Franklin County, Kentucky. 90 proof, 45% alcohol by volume. Learn more at buffalotracedistillery.com. Please drink responsibly.
It's like insane. It's like everything Tansy was saying about it's propaganda. Like it almost goes beyond feeling like a movie to me into being this like extra weird cultural item. And it's really fun to watch. Like that sounds heavy and really critical, but it's like a fun movie and a lot of hot people in it. It's a great time.
Yeah, it's absolutely a vibe. For all like the dumb bits in it, this is just so much fun. It's just got a different energy, and yeah, there's a scene where he throws the rule book in the bin. Hey everyone, joining Flixwatcher today we have Tansy.
Hi.
Eliza.
Hey.
And we have Kobe.
Hey.
And we're going to be talking about Top Gun Maverick.
Thank you as always to the mighty people for their mighty, mighty tunes, and thanks to Ben from Rockwood Audio, that's ROKK Wood Audio, who edits this podcast and all our other podcasts. Please do remember to head over to Spotify and Apple Podcasts and Pocket Casts and give us a 5-star rating and a massively glowing review. It really helps us. Join in the conversation with us on social media, on Twitter at FlixWatcherPod, because someone took Flixwatcher before we had it. Annoying. And also on Instagram at Flixwatcher, on Threads at Flixwatcher, on Blue Sky at Flixwatcher.bsky. Social nonsense. Just look for Flixwatcher, we'll be there.
Hello film fans, welcome to this episode of Flixwatcher Podcast. Our guests today are Tansy and Eliza. Over to you please, Eliza, to tell hello to our listeners and tell them a little bit more about who you are and what you do, please.
Hi, I'm Eliza. I'm just a girl. I'm a film critic. Me and my brother Noah run the podcast Midnight Screening. We just finished up a big season of episodes about Godzilla, but in general, we just sort of cover spooky, creepy, genre-y stuff, the sort of things you don't want your parents to find out you've been watching.
When you said just a girl, my head just went straight to No Doubt and I can't get it out of my, my head.
I'm just a girl. I'd rather not be, you know?
Let's talk about the Godzilla season. Which is the best Godzilla? Obviously without spoiling stuff.
Oh, both of the new ones from Toho have been awesome. Shin Godzilla and -1. It's both so good.
Shin Godzilla's such a little dude. Oh my God. The first reveal of him.
I've still not seen that yet.
He's such a little grody freak.
It's fantastic.
Yeah. I have to say, of the season we just had 6 random movies from across, the 70 years that Godzilla's been around. It was his birthday recently. Happy birthday. And one of the faves was called Destroy All Monsters. And the last 20 minutes of the movie are just all of the monsters like kicking each other and beating each other like a WWE SmackDown. It's really beautiful.
The Royal Rumble of Kaiju.
Yeah.
I was very, very taken by -1. I really couldn't get with a lot of Godzilla films which I've watched in the past, but -1 was just like, oh, this is how we can do this well, guys. Well done.
Yeah.
A well-deserved Oscar winner.
Yeah, loved it. Amazing, right?
Totally. And they had like no budget to work with. It's great. I really love that they brought back some of the score from the very, very first Godzilla movie for -1. That beautiful score that's like da 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 da. It's so like, I don't know, it just takes me there. It's so transporting.
Yeah, the sound design on Godzilla's roar in -1 I thought was just chef's kiss, like actually scary, like a scary Godzilla roar.
Yeah.
It isn't always.
It isn't always. It is.
In some of these movies, it just sounds like they're spamming a button that's one sound. Like he has his particular...
They've got a board of drops and they're like, all right, Godzilla angry, Godzilla annoyed.
Godzilla miffed.
Yeah.
Tansy, who are you?
I am Tansy Gardam. I am the host of Going Rogue, which is a podcast about films that have gone off the rails and often how we've kind of misreported the ways in which they've gone off the rails, because reshoots does not mean the film is broken, and I wish we'd stop pretending it did.
When I listen to your show, Tansy, I'm like, how long does it take you to put this together? Because our podcast, we watch a film, I don't take notes. I just kind of try and remember. Helen takes notes, but it's kind of solo effort. But I feel like you do a lot of work.
Yeah, so what happens is I get taken by an idea and then I go into a fugue state for around a month, and at the end of it, there's an episode. So at the moment, I'm deep in Francis Ford Coppola land because
Megalopolis is coming out, yeah.
Yeah, I have seen it.
Something.
I did go into a fugue state, so...
On watching this film, which we're about to talk about, I was like, oh, I wonder if Tansy would be interested in talking about the snowman.
I feel like there's the how did this get made on the snowman where a crew member joins the Q&A and the art of editing episodes that Dan Olsen did. I almost feel like the snowman has been covered, but it is one of my mate's favorite directors who did the snowman. So I almost feel like I should do it for him.
Thomas Alfredson, is it?
Yeah, so Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy straight into the snowman.
It's a swerve, isn't it?
It's the Thelma Schoonmaker of it all for me as well. It's like she's like one of the world's best editors, and she couldn't even put it all together.
She edited the snowman?
Yeah, it's Marty who exec produced it.
Edited is very kind of like...
Yeah, John Gilroy edited Suicide Squad. Like this.
Wow, insane.
Sadly, not here to talk about the snowman,
no.
though.
Maybe one day, guys. Maybe one day when Snowman's on Netflix.
We're all ready.
So we're here to talk about Top Gun Maverick. Tansy, can you tell us first of all why you chose it, and then you got 60 seconds for the synopsis.
So I chose this for a few reasons. One, it's just an insanely good film. Like it's just a good rewatch, good watch, engaging, really good piece of cinema. Two, it fits the textbook definition of propaganda, but I don't mind because it's such a good movie. And three, it kind of, I would argue that it's a Star Wars film with the serial numbers filed off. And I think that there is probably a case to be made that maybe Patty Jenkins' Rogue Squadron was delayed because it would have had a very similar plot to this.
Right. When you say delayed, does it mean shit canned? Is that even still happening?
Apparently it's still happening. Apparently it's back on. Yeah, I think there were probably a lot of reasons, but I'm choosing to believe that they watched Top Gun Maverick and were like, oh shit, we got to do some rewrites.
Next year will be Star Wars Celebration Japan. They didn't really talk about it, Star Wars Celebration London. I'll be interested to see if they would talk about any of Patty Jenkins or Taika Waititi. I imagine a lot of these films will slowly kind of just go into some tar pit and never be seen again.
Yeah, because Patty's went into the tar pit and then it stuck its little head out and was like, hey, I'm still working on it. We're still doing a script. So who knows?
Well, I mean, I want more Star Wars films. It can't finish on Solo, but I want them to be good as well. So I'd rather wait for a long time for good Star Wars films. So, okay, your timer starts now to give us the synopsis.
So Top Gun Maverick is a sequel to Top Gun, and it follows Maverick many decades after the original film. He is now testing extremely experimental aircraft and has no friends in the desert after a moderate accident. And I would argue after he dies, he then goes into a death dream of going back to Top Gun, running mission training on an incredibly difficult new mission and teaching and reconnecting with the son of Goose, his now deceased in the first movie, best mate, who had a son, and Maverick feels responsible for his death. So slowly over the course of the movie, he teaches the mission, they do the mission, and he also manages to get over the fact that he did kind of kill his best friend in the last movie and seemed fine about it at the end of the last film. And that is Top Gun Maverick.
Lovely.
Very nice.
I hadn't considered, on rewatch, this is the first time I've seen it since the cinema, but when I watched it again, I was like, how is he not dead from that explosion in the... And now you posited the theory that he's died.
The whole movie's a death dream. Yeah. It's him reconnecting with his ex-girlfriend, him like finally sorting out all of the beef with Rooster, not Goose. He flies the mission perfectly. He hands over to the next generation. Everything's great at the end. Yeah, he's dead. Man's dead.
I love it. I might have to sit with that for a bit. Helen, what are your thoughts on the Top Gun of it all?
I was skeptical about this. The fact that...
Have you seen this in the cinema?
Yeah. So I mean, I've seen Top Gun. There's bits I enjoy about it, but it's not one of those films that I hold particularly close to my heart or will protect it at all costs. So the thought of a second one like this far after was just a bit like... oh, this isn't going to be any good. Like, why are they doing it? What is the point?
Money.
Well, I had a great time at the cinema. I thought it was great. Like, I loved it. And I was really surprised how much I enjoyed it. It's a bit long. And I think if they cut the romance, it could be one of the greatest films of like modern years. But yeah, it's a lot of fun. It is kind of silly. It is completely ridiculous, but there's just something about it. And just kind of like the emotions that it brings. We just kind of haven't had this from a blockbuster in a long time. So I think it was just exactly what people needed and cinema needed at the right time. But yeah, I was a little bit sad about the Lady Gaga song at the end though. I wanted it to be better and felt that it was a little bit flat. But yeah, I like it. And it introduced me to, I've forgotten his name now, Glen Powell, which I'd never met before in films.
Oh, hadn't you?
I can't remember what I might have seen him in. And I was like,
Everybody Wants Him?
yeah, I haven't seen that yet. No.
No? Okay.
So yeah, that
Spy
was...
Kids 3?
No.
We should talk about the Glen Powell of it all at some point in this discussion.
Of it all.
Yeah. So yeah, and yeah, it's got beach football. Is that what they're playing? Kind of like tag rugby or something.
Yeah, which I don't fully understand. It's American football certainly, but I don't know how they've got two balls.
2 games at once, I think.
Yeah, I didn't understand that. And there's no one here. Any American listeners, please like message us and say why they got 2 balls in the game, because that was confusing to me and maybe to anyone else.
But yeah, great.
Eliza, what are your thoughts on Top Gun Maverick?
Oh, it's a blast. Yeah, boys and their toys. I know they showed like the opening 15 minutes at like Comic-Cons and stuff like that to be like, wow, get excited. It is just the most insanely like reverent, like it almost feels like faith-based filmmaking, but it's not for Jesus. It's for Tom Cruise and also like Lockheed Martin. It's like insane. It's like everything Tansy was saying about it's propaganda. Like it almost goes beyond feeling like a movie to me into being this like extra, I don't know, weird cultural item. And it's really fun to watch. Like that sounds heavy and really critical, but it's like a fun movie and a lot of hot people in it. It's a great time.
Yeah, I loved it. Like Helen, a lot of my friends, if you'd asked them their favourite movie back in the 90s, it would have been Top Gun. And I was always like, I mean, there's some wicked scenes, definitely, but also it's not really a film. I haven't really watched it since watching Top Gun Maverick, but there's some really cool scenes. But then it kind of ends and it kind of like Goose dies and it's like it kind of just mulches away. But this had like a proper like ending. It had a proper mission that they go on, because there's no real mission in the first Top Gun film.
Yeah, it's kind of at the end like, you've completed training. Now time for your mission. Yeah. We've got a mission in this movie. It does sort of feel like they got approved for extra budget as they got to shooting the last scenes and they're like, oh, okay, all right then.
Well, let's kind of do it then 40 years later. So I was like, it's decades later. How good can this be? And look, this is one of the places where word of mouth just really strikes hard, because the reports of it, everyone we know was like, this is amazing, go and see it in the cinema. So I went to see it in the cinema. I came out saying, this is amazing, go and see it in the cinema. And it seems like everyone in the world did that, to the extent that my wife, this is the only film she's seen in the cinema for like for like ages.
Wow.
And she went with a friend, and she took a friend who hadn't seen the first Top Gun, and they both came out raving about it. And my friend, she still hasn't seen the first Top Gun. But it kind of transcends that somehow. I don't know how it does it. It's just,
you don't need to see it. It tells you everything.
You don't.
It's like, this is Goose's son, and this is who Goose was. Did you get it? He's got the moustache. He's wearing a shirt.
It's got the rancid little mustache. It's a terrible mustache on Miles Teller. It looks ill.
It was terrible on Goose, but like, you got to keep up the family tradition, I guess.
Yeah, that's it. Because there's that scene where they look at the photo and go, well, looky here. There's a guy with a mustache. That can only be Goose's dad.
There's no other reason a man would have a mustache in this day and age. Yeah, I went in with incredibly, like, not expectations. I was like, look, I've heard that this is good. I'm willing to be convinced. And then a week later, I took my mum to see it in IMAX. I was like, no, you have to see this.
So you're the people. You've gone into you've just gone into a normal screen.
Yeah, normal cheap Tuesday, whatever, straight to IMAX.
Yeah.
Feel the need for speed.
Yeah, I mean, let's talk about the cinematic experience. This is one of the things I feel is going to lose a few points in this viewing, but I don't know, how good was it in IMAX?
Oh,
Tansy?
it's great. And yeah, it was, I think I was probably one of the few people who'd already seen it in that audience because there were cheers, there were gasps. Like it was a very interactive kind of viewing. Like,
Wow.
Yeah. And I don't know whether, because I watched it on Blu-ray, not Netflix, because I'm not sure it's on Netflix here, but that really opens up the aspect ratio when it does go to the big action scenes. Does it do that on the Netflix watch?
I don't remember. I think for me, I don't remember changing aspect ratio at all.
No, I mean, my TV's crap anyway, so yeah, it's nothing.
Yeah, well,
nothing.
it gets really big and tall for the last, I think, 40 minutes. Yeah.
Nice. Did you see it in the cinema, Eliza?
I did. And the cinema I was in, we all got a free Budweiser. So I was like, I was close to yelling like
You'll
USA,
salute the
USA.
stars and stripes by the end. Like,
Yeah, I loved it. When the credit of like a location, Fightertown, USA came up, I almost cried. It's so amazing.
yeah, in the opening credits where it has music by, is it Lorne Balfe and Lady Gaga? Like truly, that's the words that every girl wants to see.
Is it? Yeah, so I loved it in the cinema. Like I say, I came out telling everyone to go and see it, and quite a few, 1.4 billion's worth of people did do it. So
As much as I do, like, I loved it, I really enjoyed it, I do find it incredibly silly that they acted like they didn't do any VFX on it, that they kind of tried to keep up that illusion for probably a solid year before they ever, I think there were NDAs essentially for the VFX artists who worked on it. So they weren't able to talk about, and this film has 2,000 VFX shots. For comparison, Rogue One, which is a Star Wars film set in another galaxy, has 1,600. So part of that's just because it's a lot faster cutting, but it's 2,000 VFX shots.
Yeah.
And I know they did do a huge amount of practical shooting in the fighter jets, but then that was really heavily augmented. And I do think it's really silly that they were like, no VFX. We did all of this for real. And then
Miles Teller can fly now.
You watch the opening scene where the plane explodes, and you're like, yeah, they did all of that for real. Tom Cruise is dead now. That's how he would have wanted to go.
No one cares. We're not sitting there going, oh, I think this might be some computer animation when they're watching it. Seriously, like, tell us how you did it. That stuff is interesting. We like seeing those kind of like wipes when it's like, and this is the special effects, and this is the film.
The early play.
It's interesting, yeah.
I almost feel like it's a bit like actors who feel the need to go method because they're a bit scared that acting isn't a real job. And they're like, no, it's a real job. I have to do it all the time. I'm playing a phone book salesman. So all I do, I go home and I flick through the phone book. And it's like, my dude, you can just admit that you play pretend for a living. It's like, you've been like, yeah, no, we shot all of this for real. I blew myself up in a fighter jet. It's like, dude, you can tell us that these guys did a really good job of faking that.
How much did the actual actors ride in the planes in real life, for real life?
Sort of core 6 were like up in fighter jets. They had to do a huge amount of training to even get in the F-18s. They were, I think, I've forgotten the name of the actor, but he plays, I want to say Payback, but he couldn't even swim when they started training. And part of the training was practicing for what happened if the plane went down over water and essentially being put in a fake plane in a swimming pool and now you've got to get out. So they did have to do this huge amount of training, and they did shoot a lot of plates and a lot of background, like in the cockpit. There is a lot of real practical elements in that. But the comparison I would use is that for Pirates of the Caribbean, they did build pirate ships, but they never went around being like, yeah, no VFX. We built a pirate ship and we filmed on a pirate ship. And that's a movie with no VFX in it.
There you go, guys. Pirates of the Caribbean, also a film that Tansy's covered on Going Rogue, the Pirates of the Caribbean series. I used to work in oil and gas, and working offshore, you have to do the helicopter submersion into the pool and turn around and like escape from a fake helicopter thing, which is, for me as a swimmer, fucking loved it. But there were people who absolutely legitimately terrified of that. So I can understand. It was Jay Ellis who played Payback.
Yeah.
In this.
And yeah, they did do a lot in the cockpit. They basically had to invent a new type of camera where the lens was separate to the body. And like, I'm not diminishing that, but I think that they did diminish 2,000 VFX shots.
And another thing they diminished, because you said the top 6, there's 12 people supposedly in flight training, 13 including Maverick. For me, the biggest loss there is Manny Jacinto, who Fritz.
Yeah, it's bizarre. He's in like the background of some of Miles Teller's reaction shots, and you're like,
he is, yeah.
And he's distractingly handsome because you're like, oh my God, Manny Jacinto's in this movie. Like, was he always in this movie?
It's so funny later in the movie where there's a little suspense built up around like who will Maverick pick for the final mission. It's like obviously you're thinking mainly will he pick Goose? Like Goose is the son of his dear fallen comrade. Is he going to let their personal connection get in the way? And he picks all the main characters. And you're like,
imagine if he'd just be like, I'm taking Yale, I'm taking Harvard, I'm taking all of these other characters that you didn't even know were in this movie.
Yeah, and they're all
I'm
like,
taking Cyclone, I'm taking Kane. Like,
so ridiculous.
Yeah, I love Manny Jacinto from obviously The Good Place, but he was awesome in Star Wars.
The Acolyte?
Yeah, he's fantastic in The Acolyte. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's when I was thinking that was a big loss. I was like, oh man, we missed out on this guy. And I'm sure a lot of the other guys who I literally have no idea who they are at the moment, but I'm sure hopefully they'll get their chance in the future to come to light and say, I could have been in Maverick a bit more.
I like the guy Bob, who they're like, what's your name, Bob? His cool name is just Bob.
His surname is Pullman, so I'm assuming that he's the son of,
Yeah, and got to know Glen Powell well, and then Glen Powell got to know his dad, and then Glen Powell kind of played his character in Twisters. So like it all.
Well, let's do the Glen Powell bit all, because this year's a Glen Powell year, isn't it?
It is the year of Powell. I'm so glad we're here, finally.
Helen, you said, well, just go to Helen, because you hadn't heard of Glen Powell before this.
No, and like hearing the films that he was in, I haven't seen any of them, so that's not a massive surprise. But I have not seen Twisters, but I have seen Hitman.
Where he plays an ugly, horrible, smelly person who no one could ever like, and and all the students
Crazy
think he's a knobhead.
Yeah. Which I really, really enjoyed. There's also a really good podcast called Polyester, and they did a good episode on Glen Powell. And it's kind of weird, like there's people out there who really don't like him, and they're like, how can you not like him? He's a nice guy. Like he's genuinely out there making fun movies, looking all shiny and polished, but maybe he kind of came around the time of Rodent Summer. That was a thing. And he was kind of like,
we've got a corn-fed American boy in the midst of Rodent Summer. Like,
and he kind of didn't connect with that way. But yeah, I think he's fun in this, and yeah, I'll watch more films with him. You know, he kind of came up with like Hitman and worked really closely with Richard Linklater with getting that off the ground and everything, and kind of helped script it and stuff. So, which
surprised me because I know you're a Linklater fan, so I would have thought you'd seen Everybody Wants Some.
I've missed that one. And I don't think it's on Netflix. Good. So yeah, it's on my list. Maybe I'll bump it up to the top so I can.
But you're not that big a fan of, what was his second film?
Dazed and Confused.
Yeah, you're not that big a fan of Dazed and Confused, which is like a spiritual successor to Dazed and Confused. So
it's done a go. I like Linklater. Yeah, I think he's cool.
He's also in Hidden Figures, playing the astronaut John Glen. Have you seen Hidden Figures?
I have, but I don't remember him in that.
He's very briefly very handsome.
Has he got clothes on?
He's got clothes on. Okay, but he's the astronaut that goes, what about you, black lady? You can do stuff. I believe in you. And everyone goes, oh, hold on. Astronaut guy says she can do stuff, and then they believe in her. So he plays an interesting role in that. But again, a nice guy, cheesy smile.
Just like incredible screen presence. Like he does actually show up and you pay attention. But speaking of Twisters, a very American screen presence, which is really in stark contrast to Daisy Edgar Jones in that, who looks just unbelievably British. Like no matter how good her accent was, you're just like, I'm sorry, that woman knows how to pronounce Newcastle. Like
she did not grow up in that barn in Oklahoma. Get out of here.
Who else in the cast you want to highlight, guys?
I really love John Hamm in this movie. I like that John Hamm has sort of skipped. You'd imagine that like Tom Cruise would be playing that role these days, but John Hamm kind of skips straight from TV star to like, you're the grizzled general who doesn't believe in this big hero. And yeah, he managed, like, my poor guy is just trying to run a proper Navy, and Maverick, who is still a captain after all these years, because it is, as we know, the only cool rank you can have. This guy just keeps blowing shit up. Like, I feel and as well for John Hamm to be stuck there with Warlock, I think the character's name is, played by Charles Parnell, who's absolutely on Maverick's side. Like the whole time he's like, my man, my dude.
Warlock's one of my favorite names of call signs. I wasn't quite taken by John Hamm in this.
You're a bit whelmed?
Obviously, he's a bit whelmed. No, I think he played a great role, but for me, this is not a John Hamm role. It seemed casting against type, but of course, you know, he doesn't nail it at the park. He does smash it at the park. But I've enjoyed seeing him in like Curb Your Enthusiasm, where he's aping Larry David and doing an amazing job. So his comedic chops for me, like, off the level.
Oh, his 30 Rock comedic chops too. Like,
so maybe I'm just being a bit harsh because I want him to be a bit funnier and lighthearted in it. Whereas he was like the
stern
Maverick,
general.
you shall not.
It doesn't help too that he's coming after Ed Harris as the first general. Like, you can't get more general than
Ed Harris
that.
all the way, shouldn't it? Yeah, 100%.
We should probably talk about Iceman as well, because I knew he was in it, but didn't quite know how it was going to be. And I know that it wasn't quite as an emotional moment, probably for a lot of people, but I think they did that quite well in a way that could have been like overly sentimental.
And at the very least, he's deployed better here than in The Snowman.
Yeah, I was going to say, speaking of The Snowman, at least it wasn't poorly ADR'd. I do think the bit where he kind of caps off this quite emotional scene with, hey, who's the better pilot, does feel like sort of ending a Superman movie with him turning to Flash and being like, do you want to go for a foot race now?
No, I'll never watch that film again. Yeah, I want to pull into Jennifer Connelly. She's one of my OG crushes from Labyrinth when I was a kid, and she still looks amazing now, and still is, I think she doesn't get her dues as much.
Yeah, she doesn't work anywhere near as enough.
No.
Well,
she's just fantastic.
I think became old, unfortunately. She's over 40, which is the death sign for Hollywood, I think.
Was she in that Amy Schumer sketch, The Last Fuckable Day? Was she in that? Have you seen that sketch?
I don't know if she made it into that one, but
might
she
be too old.
I feel like her casting...
Julia Louis-Dreyfus was in that, so that was she's younger than JLD.
I feel like her casting in this is like a stroke of genius. She's also like an 80s icon. Obviously, she still meets conventional beauty standards, but she also doesn't look too young for Tom Cruise, whereas in the Mission Impossible movies and heaps of other movies, I feel like his age, like it's not a flattering thing for him to be cast against women who look heaps younger than him or anything. Like, they scan to me.
The biggest plot twist in the most recent Mission Impossible is that Hayley Atwell is older than Rebecca Ferguson. You're like, excuse me, what?
Oh.
What do you mean she's older?
Wow, that's wild.
Yeah.
I can't believe that.
But yeah, like he has been playing across women 20 years younger than him. So it's nice to have one who's only 10 years younger than him this time.
Yeah, not bad. Helen, you were saying before that maybe for runtime purposes you would get rid of the romance. Did you dislike the romance?
I just don't believe it. I just found it just like, it's kind of like there to make Maverick a normal kind of guy, but
Tom Cruise is not a normal guy.
Just don't get the vibes. Like, he just isn't. It just feels weird. And obviously because it must be a 12A or PG or whatever it is.
PG-13 in the States.
They drop an F-bomb at one point.
You can have one. You can get one in PG-13.
The illusion of romance is there, but there's nothing sexy about it. And it's kind of a very almost 80s implication of romance. Like, we're going to go sailing, therefore we're going to make love. But there's no like romance.
Don't look at me like that.
And it just kind of feels a bit weird because obviously she's not in the first one, and we're you're like, okay, so I'm trying to make up like this whole backstory for them in the space of this movie, and presumably it is the Kelly McGinnis character, but we didn't bring her back. So this is another woman who has kind of been in his life, and I just felt that it didn't need it. And they don't really use Jennifer Connelly particularly great. She's just a bar woman. She's in her 50s. She owns a bar. That's her thing.
But she knows how to sail a boat when Tom Cruise doesn't.
Yeah, I don't know. I kind of zoned out like for the boat bit.
I believe that she's meant to be the daughter of the admiral that is mentioned in one line in the original Top Gun. I think that is the extent of lore that she comes from, which is like there's a line about Maverick getting in trouble for taking her for a joyride. And it is literally just one line. And then they're like, yeah, she's a person now. She was before Kelly McGinnis. Don't worry about Kelly McGinnis. What happened? She got old.
I feel like what you're speaking about, Helen, it speaks to like the sexlessness of modern blockbusters or whatever, where like, yeah, you don't buy their relationship as much. The music in Top Gun Maverick is not as sexy. Like, the volleyball song is so lame. It's not hanging with the boys, playing with the boys. And they tone down the homoeroticism so much. That's something that's lacking from the new movie to me.
Yeah, you don't get Glen Powell trying to bite Miles Teller in a towel. Like, you just don't get that anymore. But I do think that, like, as well as that being a progressive, like, decades worth of slowly removing sex from movies, it is really a director thing, because Tony Scott, if I were to describe, like, the difference between Tony Scott and Joseph Kosinski, who did Maverick, it is that Tony Scott's a hot director and Joseph Kosinski is quite a cold director. Like, there is sort of a slick, quite clinical, very professional vibe to Kosinski's movies, but there's not a lot of heat to them. They are cold.
So, I mean, with the coldest being Tron Legacy.
Oh, yeah.
And we've had
Great
the
soundtrack
dig on here as well, which fairly sexless. Digging in a hole.
But yeah, like Twisters, one of the things I was sort of, I didn't feel a huge amount watching that movie. And then in the credits comes up story by Joseph Kosinski. And I'm like, there you are.
Right. But then Steven Spielberg say, take out the kissing. We don't want no kissing. We don't want no romance.
He was wrong.
Stevie.
Is there anything else guys want to say before we head to the scores?
I was going to say, I do really like Monica Barbaro. I do think that she does a good job, and that they do a good job of setting up. You sort of almost inevitably sigh when she
Phoenix.
shows up. Yeah, you inevitably sigh when it's like, oh, she and Goose are already friends. Okay, we're going to get some sort of romance here.
Rooster.
And then instead, Rooster. We keep doing that. It's almost like the movie wants us to.
It's that moustache.
Yeah, but
Hypnotizing.
it's set up like it's going to be,
moustache.
oh yeah, they're already friends, so of course they're going to end up in a romance. But instead it is her befriending a new guy and him having a romance with Glen Powell's legally not Iceman. Like,
I wonder if the Air Force recruitment ads that were played before the film in US cinemas would have ever worked on me. If it was Budweisered up and they played a recruitment ad before the movie, and then I watched this, I'd ever be like, yeah, I'm going to put my name down. Why not? Because
that was widely reported about the first one for increasing recruitment, didn't it? And I wonder if it has had any effects nowadays. But for me, it was like, so hold on, I saw a film where, I admit it would be quite fun to ride planes at Mach whatever, but also
but
people
your best
died
friend
in it.
will die.
Yeah. That makes you want to join up? I don't get it.
I guess some people just don't care for their best friend.
And also, like, having the arrogance to think you could be in the top 1%. Top Gun is 1% of pilots.
That's the American dream. You got to know that you are the best. It's not the plane, it's the pilot.
Yeah.
So my question before we go to the scores, I know it's running a little bit long, but it's a big film. We want to talk about it. Is the Lego sequel aspects of things. And now we're seeing more and more of these come out of the tin. And this is probably the one that's opened the box most recently more to make people think, actually, people remember stuff from more than 2 years ago. Let's greenlight some of those films.
Yeah.
Tansy, you used to work in production. What are your thoughts on that?
I think it's interesting because this is probably the one that tries the least to hand over the torch. Like, you think about something like The Force Awakens, which, it is a Harrison Ford movie, but it does spend a lot of time setting up all of these other characters, this new generation. Yeah. You have that with the new Ghostbusters, I believe. I refuse to watch them. But it is that sort of legacy sequel where it's, okay, here's the new cast. They're going to interact with the old guys, but those old guys need to be in bed by 9 p.m. So we've got to have plot that they're not in because we're going to have to shoot until 2 a.m. But this is a Tom Cruise movie. At no point, it's Top Gun Maverick. It is not attempting to hand over the torch in any way, shape or form. And I think it'll be interesting to see if other franchises try to do that, because even Indiana Jones' Dial of Destiny did still try to be like, hey, we've got a torch. We might be handing it over, perhaps, if you're interested.
You're not interested?
No,
okay, fine.
No one's interested. What if you went back in time? You guys like this? Mutt died in Vietnam. Anyway.
Eliza, Helen, Lego sequel thoughts?
I haven't seen Beetlejuice 2 yet. I don't like the Jurassic World ones.
It's not all right. We had Jurassic World on here a while ago, and it was kind of like...
have to listen.
Oh, it's Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom we had. Not Jurassic World.
Oh, yes, the last Jedi of the Jurassic World franchise.
No surprise from me that I am not a fan of them broadly. I just kind of think, just make up some new characters and new stuff. Like, I feel like every film from the 80s has been kind of like pillaged to stretched out and dragged from the 80s, and it's just like blurg. I think I saw on Twitter that there was a fake kind of Goonies mentioned, that there was going to be another Goonies.
Yeah, I heard of Goonies too. I didn't look into it much, so I was just kind of like, well, if it happens, I'm sure.
I think Sean Astin shared like what looked like a sequel poster, but apparently there's no truth in it. But I just saw that and just thought, just no. Just
I think it's because Ki Hai Kwan is now back a thing again.
Yeah,
so
probably.
I think filmmaking that relies so heavily on nostalgia is just so lazy. And yeah, people are going to go and see it and go, oh yeah, this is like the one I watched when I was younger. But yeah, it's not really very good. But the nostalgia kind of emotion in there is what's driving it. And I just make some new characters. You could continue a world or a universe, but like make the new characters. Maybe just don't keep dragging these actors back to play these roles, and you're just like, I don't want to see you in your 60s doing this. It just ruins the image I had of this character who was young, fun, exciting. Like, stop it.
You forget about the money of it all. $1.4 billion.
And you're forgetting that they did create new characters. They created Rooster, a guy we all remember so well and definitely don't keep referring to as the character that he's clearly meant to be.
This is the exception. This is the only one that I will say is an exception. But
that's what I said about it being the Pandora's box, where people go, oh, actually, this could work.
Yeah, and I suppose Beetlejuice, like you said, Eliza, is kind of closer to this model, where it is, you know, we've got some younger actors who can work till 2 a.m., but it is a Michael Keaton movie.
Yeah, I've heard he's not in it heaps.
Oh,
though.
boo.
I have to say, 2 of the Lego sequels I've enjoyed both have Keanu in them. Matrix Resurrections.
Really?
And Bill and Ted Face the Music. I liked both of those.
I mean, Keanu, I'll watch in anything, but
sure.
Maybe not some of his mid-90s stuff. I was going to say, as we're recording this, James Earl Jones has just passed, and that made me think about coming to America, and also then the Axel F as well as 2 Lego sequels, which were okay. They were okay-ish. I don't mind Lego sequels if they're going to be as good as this one, but generally they're not.
The question is, will Shrek 5 be in this mode, or will it be a new Ghostbusters?
I'm telling you now, I'm going to pass.
We don't know. We don't know.
Well, the Toy Story 5 is coming down the drain soon, isn't it?
Yikes.
Right. Let's head to the scores.
I'm Sam Clements, host of the 90 Minutes or Less Film Festival, another podcast in the Stripped Media family, a podcast that celebrates movies under 90 minutes long. Each episode, I'm joined by a special guest who selects a movie to join our prestigious lineup. Past guests have included fellow Stripped Media family members Martin and Sam from Song by Song, and Kobe from Flixwatcher, and Dave from The Wire Stripped. Search for us now on the app you're currently listening to this podcast, or join us at 90minfilmfest.com.
Welcome to our Flixwatcher scores. They're always out of 5. You can have decimal places if you wish. And we'll start with you, please, Tansy, with your recommendability.
It's a 5. Like, I do, if anyone's interested in this, I'd be like, yeah, hell yeah, absolutely.
Eliza.
Damn, solid 5. Yeah, I mean, you're talking about the word of mouth success of it. But I wonder for recommendability, does it matter if it's just like, who on earth hasn't heard of this movie or heard that it's good at this point? I think trying to take that into account, my recommendability would be like 4.7.
Helen.
Yeah, it's absolutely a 5. For all like the dumb bits in it, this is just so much fun. It's just got a different energy, and yeah, there's a scene where he throws the rule book in the bin.
Then he turns his seat backwards and says, you know who was a bit like Shakespeare? Jay-Z.
It's, you know, you just kind of have to just let all that go and roll with it. And yeah, so it's a 5 for me. If you haven't seen it, what have you been doing?
I'm going 4.8 here. I think you got to watch it. Ideally watch it in cinema and ignore your gut reaction, which is what everyone here seems to have had, is like, it can't be any good, can it? And yeah, it's a lot of fun. Repeat viewing score, Tansy.
I'd give it a 4.5 because I think that Helen is right and the romance does drag, especially the more than second time around. But I think this was the fourth time I've seen it and I was still locked in. I was still just, I had a great time with it.
I should say, when we asked, you said why you chose this film. One of the reasons you chose this film was because we're like, one of your first choices was Rebel Moon. And we were like, but really?
Yeah. The thing is, I'd seen Rebel Moon enough times that I could have sleepwalked through it. And I like to, so few other people have seen it. So few people share my pain that.
I was quite keen to watch it and Helen vetoed it.
I didn't.
I thought he came along afterwards saying we want to watch it.
I think the exact words were, we like to watch movies that are enjoyable to watch.
Kobe said that. That was Kobe. And I defended Snyder in that we'd already had 2 of his films on. But
I thought you didn't like Snyder.
Comparing this to Rebel Moon, which I have watched multiple times.
It would be a different record.
Yeah.
The score would probably be slightly different, I think.
Yeah.
We'd be asking about negatives rather than decimals.
Because I do want to watch it because I can't, I just want, it's that kind of forcing yourself to see the car crash. But the fact there's now the original film and the director's cut,
can choose.
I'm just like, I'd have
How
to,
long would you like for this to go? How long is the train crash?
I'd have to watch them all though, because I'm that much, if I press play on one, I'd have to watch the original version, theatrical quote unquote cut, and the director's cut to see what the difference is. Oh. And this is where, David Chen as well, on his podcast, Filmcast, where he did that to hopefully, so other people didn't have to. He went through that pain, and I feel I would have to go through that system as well. Yeah. Eliza, sorry, slight segue there.
No,
Not segue, non sequitur. Eliza, repeat boon score for this.
Yeah, I'm going to give it a 4.2, not because the romance interested me less this time, but because once I was booting up the movie, Maverick is speaking to the class when he says, it's when he's speaking to John Hamm, to Cyclone. He goes, someone's not coming out of this. And everyone does. Spoiler alert. The movie sets up huge near suicide mission stakes, and then it's really, in an almost propagandistic way, it's like, wow, we got everything we wanted and we're so happy and beautiful and muscular. And so knowing that was coming up in my rewatch, I felt a little deflated and was like, I kind of wish I was watching this for the first time in a big cinema.
So it would have been 5 stars had someone died.
Yeah, Kilmer. I mean, Iceman dies, I suppose.
Yeah, there's also that scene where, there's the terrible plane crash and then they're like, Phoenix and Bob are going to be in hospital overnight. And it's like, are they? Overnight?
Over every night, forever.
Helen.
I was kind of psyched to watch it again when you picked it, because obviously I hadn't seen it since it was at the cinema. But this is going to allude to the next scores. It wasn't as much fun watching it at home, I think. And I don't know how often I'm going to repeat view it in the home environment. So I'm going to give it a 3.5. It was good to watch it again to refresh my memory, but the experience wasn't as fun this time around.
I'm going to go for 4. And I did mention that my wife has, I actually forgot, we went to the cinema to see the Bob Marley documentary on Valentine's Day. But between then and that, she hasn't been to the cinema. But she keeps wanting to rewatch this. So there's a pull. There's this film does pull people in. I would like to, or maybe this is more of a small screen score thing, so I'll wait until we get there. Small screen score. Tansy.
Yeah, this really is, at the risk of sounding like Tom Cruise, this is a cinema movie. This is a big screen, big surround sound. It's the group watching experience. And I have watched this on quite a small screen over a holiday weekend with my parents after I'd wrestled the remote away and turned off motion smoothing, and it is a completely different experience. And you do sort of feel more of an urge to check your phone when it's on a small screen. So I'm honestly going to give it a 3 for small screen, just because it is a big screen movie.
And also, I know that I keep on mentioning David Chen in this episode, but one thing he does, which I find hilarious, is at a holiday period in America, he puts a post out saying, it's called motion for your TV screen. It's called motion smoothing. It's called cinema mode for LG. It's called this for when you go back to your parents' house and they've just got the setting at the worst.
But the thing is, even after you've done that, they've still just sometimes they're just using the internal speakers on the monitor. And you can't fix that. You can't fix the angle at which they've put the couch compared to the TV, and there's a table along the wall, so you can't actually get a good angle on. Yeah, you can't fix that. It's not your house.
Yeah, your neck's broken at the end, isn't it? At the end of watching Top Gun Maverick, your neck's I can't do this anymore. But yeah, 3 mentions for David Chen in this one episode. Eliza, small screen score.
Yeah, the small screens is what's going to kill it, isn't it? I'm going to give it a 2.2 because I think it's so, it's so made for the cinema. It's the big blockbuster of 2022. I think, there's no comparing seeing it in a cinema versus at home.
Helen?
Yeah, so I tried to get Reese to watch this, but it was half explaining Top Gun to him rather than him going with the story. And then he gave up after saying, well, this is silly, this is stupid. That wouldn't happen. So,
well, of course it wouldn't. He's dead.
So Reese, so give Reese Tansy's theory, and maybe they'll just go, okay, I'm with it now. Yeah.
And also, how long is this? Oh, I'm not going to watch that. So that was the home experience, which wasn't quite the same as being in a cinema with people who wanted to be there, wanted to watch it, and were there and engaged and not asking, who is Goose? What is Goose? Why is he called Rooster?
What is Goose?
So, yeah, it wasn't quite the same experience, let's say. So I'm going to give it a 3.
I love the idea of like Reese just turning to saying, what's Goose? What is Goose? Has Reese watched Jurassic Park yet?
No. I think it's going to have to be a cinema one, else, he's going to ask silly questions. And then at least if we're in the cinema, then...
I'll be asking, he'll be saying that wouldn't happen. I'm going for 2.5. It's not. It wasn't as good, and there's no way it's going to be as good. I'd love to 100% watch this as a double bill with the first Top Gun in the cinema. So if there are any other screenings happening, I'd love to see that. But yeah, it's not going to be big. 2.5 for me. Engagement score, Tansy.
It's probably a 4.5. Like, it is a very engaging movie. Like, it's very watchable, but particularly that last 40 minutes once they're on the mission, and particularly the sort of the switch of terrain, so you're not watching the same thing that they've been training. It does feel tangibly different, and you're genuinely engaged in it. And at the risk of TMI, I spent most of my rewatch making a pair of pants because I do some sewing. And as soon as we got to that last mission, I was like, sewing's going away. We got to lock in. We're on this mission with Maverick. I can't let him down.
Are pants in Australia, are they underpants or they're trousers?
No, they're outer pants.
Okay, that's just, guys, if you want to have a clear vision for the TMI image that Tansy put in front of you. Eliza.
I'm going to give it a solid 4. I think if I turn this on and some of the songs were playing, the music licensing budget for this movie must have been off the chain. Like, they've got some hits.
Well, the whole budget for this movie is like
true.
insanity.
No expense was spared.
No way. Yeah, I would be sucked in really quickly. I'm really a Tom Cruise fan as well. I make apologies for him a lot. Not for everything he's done.
We haven't talked about the Tom Cruise bit already, have we, actually, to be honest?
Right.
Yeah, again, it's like the thing where it's like, I know it's propaganda. I know it's recruitment. I know he's in a cult. It's such a good movie.
Yeah.
I just think
to be honest, if Scientology turns you into Tom Cruise, maybe we're all missing out.
This is it, yeah.
Yeah.
I know some people who won't watch films because there's Scientologists in them. Elizabeth Moss, for example. Some people saying who haven't watched her films because they're not bothered. But I think Tom Cruise is every time I hear a story about Tom Cruise in real life, he's larger than life and astonishing that he knows everyone in the scene. He goes and introduces himself to every single person, whether they're the popcorn seller or the director or whatever. He takes his time to say hello to everyone, which seems like it shouldn't be a rare thing, but it really is this day and age. So he kind of transcends that for me. But also he's just like, he does make these good films, which I shouldn't really like, but I really do. So it annoys me.
My favorite Tom Cruise story is from Paul Hirsch, who edited a couple of the Mission Impossible movies. And apparently if you're on set and you walk up to Tom and you say, "How are you doing, Tom?" he just goes, "Making a movie," and like just the biggest smile on his face.
Helen, engagement score.
I'm just looking at my notes, like the kill training scene is so good. Like it's
the kill training scene.
Yeah, the training scene where he basically says you have to kill me or I kill you.
Oh, you mean when they have to do 200 press-ups?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, it's so much fun. It's so good. It's so surprising. It's just great. 4.5 engagement.
Yeah, I do think the love story does slow it down a bit, but also I'd like seeing Jennifer Connelly in there. But generally, there's another thing 5 minutes later, there's another thing that pulls you in a bit more. If you're lagging, then there's another thing. And my favorite scene isn't the mission at the end. I think that maybe drags a bit when they get separated and have to find a new plane, and then blah blah, and then out of nowhere comes Hangman. Fine, but the scene where Maverick's been shit-canned, and then John Hamm's going to take over the realms, and suddenly in the background on the screen, Maverick appears, sets the timer to 2 minutes 15, and everyone's like, "Is he going to do it?" And then he does it, and then at the end, Warlock's like, "Yes!" Fist bumps. That bit again. Even though I was watching on the home screen, I was like leaning forward, even though I knew exactly what was going to happen. And it wasn't any jeopardy because it wasn't actually on a mountain range. It wasn't going to crash. But it's still like, how do you actually do that in a film where you've just sucked you in for 2.5 minutes? It's that's special effects. That's just astonishing.
Yeah,
even cinema,
baby. The opening sequence where he's going to Mach 10, like what you are essentially watching is a number go up on a screen. You're watching it slowly edge up in decimals, and then it gets to 10, and he's like, "What about 10.1?" And yeah, like it's so enthralling. It is a number going up.
4.5. That gives us an overall score of 4.01250. Small screen score. That's what
down. Yeah.
That's what I expected. Tansy, Eliza, can you tell everyone where we can find you guys online, and we'll say goodbye to the listeners?
Yeah, you can find me on Going Rogue on all of your podcast platforms. It's a very popular podcast name. So it's the one that looks the most Star Warsy. And I'm on all the various social medias. There's not a lot of Tansies. I'll probably show up if you search it.
Eliza.
Yeah, you can find Midnight Screening podcast that I do with my brother, Noah Janssen. We're on Instagram at Midnight Screening Productions. I'm on Twitter if you want to talk to me, yell at me at Eliza_Janssen, all lowercase. And
you want people to yell at you?
No,
it's
but
all
if they
engagement.
have to, that's true. I've got a website too at elizajanssen.com if you want to read some stuff I've written.
Splendid. Thank you very much, guys. It's been a pleasure to revisit Top Gun Maverick.
No,
Thanks
you
so
for
much for
having
coming
us.
on.
You can be my man anytime. Bye.
Enjoyed this episode of Flixwatcher podcast? Why not leave us a 5-star review on iTunes? You can also follow us at FlixWatcherPod on Twitter, and we're at FlixWatcher on Instagram. Thanks as always to the mighty people for their mighty tunes, and Rockwood Audio's editing skills. If you're looking to get your podcast edited as sweet as this, get in touch with Rockwood, ROKK Wood Audio. Tell them Flixwatcher sent you.
You just heard a Stripped Media production.